Good morning, everyone. Salam alaikum. I think you will agree that that was a very creative way to begin this year's WISE. Welcome to all of you here. Welcome to everyone watching on the live stream from different parts of the world, and a special welcome to Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser. My name is Mishal Hussain, and it is my privilege to again be your MC. For me, WISE is a very rich and rewarding 3 days. 3 days in which we hear about innovations in education around the world and about the people who are using those innovations to really push the boundaries of learning. Now, last year we talked a lot about bringing education to life, making it a more meaningful experience, truly relevant to learners' needs and aspirations. This year, we go a step further and focus on creativity in education. What kind of teaching, what kind of learning can truly equip us for a very different world than the one which today's education systems were born out of? It is a timely debate. Let's begin it now with some opening thoughts from the chairman of WISE. Please welcome Dr. Abdulla bin Ali Al-Thani.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Your Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Qatar and to WISE 2014. I also welcome those around the world who are joining us online. We gather this week through our shared commitment to innovation and action in building the future of education. Today, global education stands at a crossroads. With the deadline of 2015 Millennium Development Goals approaching, we have a unique opportunity in the months ahead to define the global education agenda for the next decade. An agenda for action and results. An agenda that responds to issues of access and quality. The challenges are numerous. Nearly 60 million children and young people around the world still lack access to school, particularly in fragile states and in the regions of conflict. A further 250 million children are at risk of leaving school without basic literacy and numeracy skills. But the education challenges are not limited to the developing world. Even in developed nations, challenges abound. This is why education is a global imperative. Students are disengaged, teachers are demotivated, and graduates find it more and more difficult to translate their qualification into gainful employment. Education is no longer the engine for social mobility it once was. There is an urgent need to close the gap between the education we have and the education we need. At WISE, we believe education system must be reinvigorated through innovation. Providing a quality education is not simply an economic necessity, but a moral imperative. Qatar is a country that believes strongly in education. His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al-Thani, has described it as one of our national priorities. For 2 decades, Qatar Foundation has been working to improve lives in Qatar and abroad through education, under the leadership of its chairperson, Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser. Her Highness has been a passionate advocate of universal access to quality education as a key to individual empowerment and social transformation. She launched WISE in 2009 because it was clear that education needed to innovate in order to meet the demands of present and future generations. Since then, WISE has gained a reputation for identifying and promoting innovative practices in education and supporting collaboration among a growing community of education leaders and thinkers. We are proud of our accomplishments, but aware that much remains to be done. As we gather for these 3 days, let us reflect on the opportunities before us. Our theme this year is invitation to explore our creativity as learners, educators, business leaders, and policymakers. We know that our societies are increasingly dependent on empowered individuals who can collaborate and can combine critical thinking, curiosity, and determination. Indeed, as we reflect on the challenges we face as a global community, we recognize that the crucial role that creativity plays in developing solutions. By focusing on creativity this week, we want to explore with you the role it can play not only as a part of the learning process, but also as a necessary outcome of education. In other words, the question we need to answer is, how do we develop creative schools and systems that inspire creative learners? We will discuss how creativity arises, how it can be taught, how it can be measured, and most importantly, how it can enable and support all learners. Finding creative solutions to enhance access to quality education remains a high priority. Her Highness's Education Above All Foundation will hold a special session tomorrow on this crucial topic. We hope the questions around creativity will be brought to life at WISE this week. In addition to our debates, keynotes, and workshops, you will find more informal opportunities for networking and interactivity in the Majlis and the Creative Lab. I hope you will take advantage of this many opportunities this week and practice actively in WISE. I am confident we can bring fresh vigor to our shared quest for new creative solutions. WISE will always be an international platform, but we are also committed to voicing the perspective of local and regional educational communities, as well as being resources for them. This year, we have partnered with a number of local organizations to offer various activities before and during WISE. I wish to thank these organizations for their collaboration: the Supreme Education Council, Qatar Museums, Teach for Qatar, Lusail, the World Innovation Summit for Health, and Qatar Cultural Village. We hope to do more in the years to come to support Her Highness' vision of Qatar as a center of excellence in education. Ladies and gentlemen, before I conclude, I would like to take a moment to remember a committed friend of WISE, Mr. Emilio Putin, whose loss earlier this year we felt deeply. Mr. Putin was chairman of Banco Santander, one of our key partners and supporters, and a true champion of the cause of education around the world. We shall miss his steadfast support and friendship. Finally, I would like to thank you, the WISE community, for your participation, ideas, and presence. Let us take what we learn here and together build a brighter future for all through education. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdulla. Ladies and gentlemen, as you would expect from WISE, you will find a varied environment of the very latest and the most creative education innovations, ideas and examples of work from around the world right here at the QNCC. And the centerpiece, as Dr. Abdulla said, is the Majlis on the ground floor. In a moment, I'll be sharing a roadmap to help you make the most of what you can see and experience while you are here. But first, a few questions that go to the heart of this year's theme and the debates that we will be having. First, how do we nurture creativity at all ages, particularly among the youngest? How do we design an environment of creative learning and innovative teaching? And how do we measure, assess, and certify creative skills? Now, I'm sure you will have your own views on these questions already, and in fact, we have a snapshot of views because of opinion polls conducted by WISE ahead of the summit. And one question asked was this: do schools kill creativity? A provocative suggestion, and here's what you thought. No less than 66% of you agreed said yes, that schools do kill creativity. That is a powerful statement with which to start the conversation. And based on these results, the challenge is huge. Where do we begin? What is, in fact, the biggest barrier to having more creativity in schools? Again, this was a question we asked in the opinion poll, asking, is it teaching to the test? Is it a lack of teacher training and tools, a stringent curriculum, a risk-averse school culture, or simply indifference to creativity? And here are the results of the poll. 36% of people thought that teaching to the test was the biggest barrier, assessment methods. And this central question will be addressed this afternoon in a debate in Auditorium 3. Incidentally, this poll is still live on the WISE website, so if you haven't responded but would like to do so, you can do just that via the WISE website. Of course, creativity in education will mean different things to different people. So, here are the thoughts of some well-known education champions.
I think if I was going to define creativity, it would have to be the art of imagining what is possible beyond what is known now.
And we don't know what's possible until we push the boundaries, until we innovate, until we're creative. And I think the opportunities that lie ahead of us through innovation and creativity have illustrated in the past just how incredible the changes that you can make can be.
We want to be the first generation that develops all of the talents of all of the young people of the world.
Making sure that whether it's your libraries, your park district, your schools, everybody's aligned in making sure our kids are advancing academically and educationally.
We're talking about educating kids now. We need to be thinking, what education do they actually need? Not how do we simply move them on the conveyor belt to the university and then ostensibly to the job.
Don't sit in your office, wherever you are in the world, thinking that you're changing the world if you don't have a human connection, an emotional connection with people.
Il faut apprendre à créer des choses, à changer des choses en permanence. D'abord, c'est plus amusant, et puis c'est plus important pour notre société aujourd'hui, où nous sommes très nombreux, et c'est très gratifiant aussi par-dessus le marché. Et ça, il faut l'apprendre à l'école.
You can ask me any question in the world, and I can find the answer on Google or Wikipedia or on any device in 5 seconds. So knowledge is not knowing facts. Knowledge, education should be about creativity.
It's about applying knowledge. It's about providing foundations. How do you apply that knowledge in solving problems, in interacting with individuals, in being part of a community?
You know, people often say to me, you know, as if it's all self-evidently true, you know, that you can't teach creativity. Well, you can. You give them challenges, you set them tasks, you give them freedom to speculate and hypothesize. There's a pedagogy associated with helping other people be more creative.
If you don't pass the exam by the end of the month, your scholarship will disappear and you have to go and work in agriculture, hard work. That's also very effective to make people learn. Huh?
We're in a mobile economy. We need the imagination. We need people who are seen as whole people, not just as cogs in a machine.
It just means that the teacher needs to begin thinking more about curating the teaching and learning process, the certain types of resources. It also means that the educator needs to spend more time trying to create the right context of learning.
They can use, for instance, case studies. They can use field trips. They can use role play. It depends on the objectives and the goals of the lesson itself.
If you have a traditional top-down, teacher-driven pedagogy, you will not touch emotions or passion, and emotions are the basis for learning.
But we know the most important part of learning is being able to understand how to make sense of a new situation, how to create things in the world, how to experiment, how to explore, how to express yourself, communicate ideas.
We don't need reform, we need transformation. Changing the mindsets of government, of the private sector, of parents, teachers, and learners to embrace a learning process which is setting the foundations for lifelong learning. Also setting the foundations for reaching for the sky.
Well, there you have some thoughts to kickstart our conversation. Your Highness, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, WISE is a unique global gathering and therefore a unique setting in which to really debate the education of the future. The 1,600 participants here together represent 120 countries. And this is much more than a gathering of educators, because among you are policymakers, representatives of non-profits, technology companies, changing the way that we think about learning, and of course, not forgetting teachers. Some of you are news to WISE, others return year after year. You are all very welcome. Some of you are here as speakers, but I know that many more will be actively contributing to WISE with your own skills and experience. And as ever, the WISE message will go far beyond Doha. We'll be using a series of Twitter hashtags during our 3 days. The main one will be WISE14, and then there will be additional hashtags for the individual sessions. Now, those of you who have been here before will know that there is always a special moment in the opening session when we honor an outstanding contribution to education by awarding the WISE Prize. And this year's laureate will be revealed in a moment. But first, please welcome the founding force behind WISE, the chairperson of the Qatar Foundation and UNESCO's Special Envoy on Basic and Higher Education, Her Highness Sheikha Moza bint Nasser.
السيدات والسادة السلام عليكم.
Ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you. Since 2009, we have sought for the WISE Prize for Education to become a celebration of extraordinary achievements executed by pioneers and innovators in the area of education. We wish for the spirit of the celebration to match the aspiration in supporting the trend of innovation in education to keep pace with the changes and challenges of a changing world. Certainly, this celebration is not for the laureate alone. Rather, it is a direct tribute to all innovators in the area of education, as well as the advocates of the right to universal education. We wish to enhance the status of innovation in order to create exceptional solutions and support the various global efforts in addressing the challenges of education as a priority. Today, we honor the meaningful and continuous research towards creating a new vision for education, which establishes new concepts beyond the typical way of tackling education issues and its related issues. I'm delighted to inform you today that the WISE Prize jury for education has chosen a laureate that the jury believes distinctively represents the values of WISE, the values of innovation, sustainability, and awareness of development dimensions of education. We consider the laureate of the WISE Prize an example in expressing the power of education and the power that education has to change societies. She is a woman who is recognized, as we also believe, that education holds the solution to all problems, that it creates a cycle that enables addressing and combating poverty. Such a lady who is full of the spirit of innovation fully deserves to be bestowed with the honor of the 2014 WISE Prize.
This year's WISE Prize is awarded to someone who has dedicated nearly 20 years to the cause of education for girls in Africa. Since 1993, her organization has educated and supported more than 3 million young women in the poorest parts of Ghana, Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The winner is the founder of CamFed, Ann Cotton. Before we welcome Anne on stage, here is a glimpse of her work in Tanzania.
Every child that is out of school holds up a mirror to the adult world that says, "You have failed me. This is unacceptable. I will not accept that failure."
Anne Cotton's first trip ever to Africa was in 1991, when, as a young mother and student in education, she visited a school in the remote community of Mola in western Zimbabwe.
In the early stages, I realized that girls had not been asked what they wanted to do in the future, largely because the opportunities didn't exist for others than to marry really quite young. There wasn't money in the family for them to go to school. So when I began to ask them what their aspirations were, I met really quite blank faces and silence. So I started to walk to homes with girls on the journey, and it was really through that I began to understand the severity of the constraints on their lives and the level of poverty that their families were facing. That was my learning ground, and they taught me. They taught me what was possible.
How are you? What are you going to read today? Adamoyo.
Right?
Why were you selected as the drummer?
Ndundiko.
Oh, Ndundiko. Oh, it's a difficult word.
On her return to Cambridge, Anne started campaigning. CAMFED, Campaign for Female Education, was launched. Then a budding endeavour far from the international organisation it has become, but from day one answerable, first and foremost, to those rural girls in Africa.
I remember the second time Chief Mola said to me, "Oh, you have come back." And I said, "Yes, I promised." And he said, "How will we work together?" So I said, "Well, I don't know how to do this, so I'm ready to listen and learn." He said, "We'll call a community meeting." And literally hundreds of people came. And I was so thrilled that here was this interest in girls' education that was just waiting, waiting for an opportunity to express itself and to act. And actually, they designed the CAMFED model that day.
To this day, community members of all levels participate through existing institutions in the design and implementation of the CAMFED model.
The community clearly understands what they need. They understand exactly what they lack so that they are able to tackle the challenges that they face. We work together so that we support them, we push them where they don't have, for example, financial assistance so that they can push their development.
And administer the CAMFED funds to fight the devastating cycle of poverty in resonance with Anne Cotton's own story.
My grandmother, bibi yake, left school when she was 12 years old.
Aliacha shule akiwa na miaka 12.
Her father was killed in a mining accident and there was no money. And she knew what she had lost. And when I was a child, if I was just sitting like this,
akiwa amekaa tu,
she would say, "Read a book." And in my work, I remember her.
Adopting a holistic approach, CAMFED invests in all aspects of the beneficiary's environment, with an eye on the long term.
As the first girls were coming out of secondary education to a job market in which there were very few jobs for them, and they were going to go to town in search of work, and that would put them in a situation of great vulnerability. And so we decided to launch an alumni organisation. Of course, this is the way the powerful consolidate and extend their power. So why not rural girls in Africa?
I have my bone. I have my bone. I have my bone. I have my bone. I feel better. I feel better.
We've been going for 20 years, and the organisation has quite literally grown up with the first groups of girls who received support to go through school. And many of them are now the leaders of our organisation across Africa. And drive and commitment, an absolute commitment to ensuring accountability to the girls for whom we work as our clients is really what inspires everyone across the organisation.
I want to be an engineer. I want to be a professor. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a pilot.
Our aim is to support 1 million girls in secondary school education. Just imagine 1 million girls in Africa, all of whom are from a background of rural poverty, all of whom understand the anxiety, the frustrations of poverty. Just imagine them in the education and health systems, in politics, in journalism, in law, in engineering, in science. Just imagine the power of what they can do.
Ladies and gentlemen, now you see why Anne Cotton's work was awarded this year's Wise Prize for Education. Please join me in welcoming Anne to the stage alongside Dr. Abdulla. Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, Dr. Abdulla, for making the presentation. And I'd like to invite you to say a few words. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. This is an incredible honor. Your Highness, the Chairperson of the Qatar Foundation, Sheikha Moza bin Nasser, thank you. And indeed, the Chairperson of the Wise Foundation, Dr. Abdulla Ali Al-Thani. This is a very great honor, and I'm reminded, as I stand here, of some words from a young Zimbabwean girl, Barbara. She was 13 years old when she wrote, "When I heard I was to go to school, the force of gravity was really jealous because I could have jumped and touched the clouds." Now, my jumping days are long over, but I certainly feel that sentiment, that joy of her words as I stand here today. And of course, I have been accompanied on this journey and supported by so many that I would like to thank. All those communities, especially those girls in Africa who taught me so much, and the place where it began, the very poor village of Mola in Zimbabwe that welcomed me and showed me that girls were out of school because of deep poverty. I want to thank every member of the CAMFED organization. Tireless work across 5 countries of Africa, Ghana, Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, and my colleagues in the US and the UK, and particularly the leaders of the executive team. And I want to thank all those who, in those early days, when it was an idea, who said, "Do it, we're with you," and put their faith and trust in this idea. And all the trusts and foundations and governments and the individuals, the schools, the mosques, the churches that have come behind us and contributed so generously. And of course, my family, my husband Charles, my children, James, Helen, and Gareth, whose love really are the foundation of my life. And there is one person who for the last 20 years has stood beside me, and whose brilliant mind and whose courage is unmatchable. Lucy Lake, who is CAMFED's CEO, and will take the organization to new heights. And so I want to dedicate this prize to all those girls in Africa who've shown us just what can be done when they're given their right, when they're able to exercise their right to education. And I want to dedicate it too to the futures of those girls, so even as we sit here, fetch and carry water and wood, and have no idea that the Wise Prize is going to change their lives forever. Thank you.
And many congratulations to you and indeed to the entire team at CamFed. And it's wonderful to think of how this will be able to further your work. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Highness Anne Cotton, this year's laureate. Today we talk so much about girls' education and the importance of educating girls as well as boys. But I think 20 years ago when Anne began her journey with CamFed, it was really not talked about very much at all, or indeed probably accepted as one of the injustices of life. So congratulations, Anne, and we look forward to hearing more about your work and your mission when you speak in the closing ceremony on Thursday. Well, Anne now joins the Community of WISE Prize for Education Laureates. That is just one of the communities that has grown out of WISE over the years. There are also the projects that have won WISE awards, and you will see this year's unveiled tomorrow night. There are also the WISE learners and the work highlighted in the WISE book. And this year, for the first time, we welcome projects chosen to be part of the WISE Accelerator. These are projects which are receiving support that will enable them to take a major step forward in their growth and the impact that they have. There are 5 of these, and they are all represented here in Doha, and we hope that you have a chance to meet them and to hear more about what they are doing. Finally, an important word of thanks to the sponsors and the partners who make all of this possible. The platinum sponsors, Banco Santander, ExxonMobil, and Qatar Petroleum. The silver sponsors, the partners, and all our international media partners as well. Thank you to everyone whose contribution makes this gathering and everything that goes alongside it throughout the year possible. I wish you a thought-provoking, an intense, and a rewarding few days. Enjoy WISE. Thank you all.